What you're about to hear isn't just a sentencing. It's the final chapter of a case that left an entire community shaken. We're in Quincy, Illinois, where 39-year-old Tim Bleefnick stands convicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of home invasion. 6 months before this moment, prosecutors say his life was unraveling behind the scenes. Bleefnick was in the middle of a bitter divorce from his wife.
6 months earlier, police say Bleefnick was going through a heated divorce with his 41-year-old wife, Becky. One night, while their 3 children were sleeping at Bleefnick's house, Bleefnick went to Becky's home.
41-year-old Becky Bleefnick, and the tension between them had reached a breaking point. One night, while their 3 children slept at Bleefnick's home, investigators say he drove to Becky's house alone. According to police, he forced his way inside through a window, armed with a gun, and carried out a brutal attack that would end her life. Becky was shot 14 times inside her own home. Her father discovered her body the following day, a moment that immediately turned suspicion toward her husband. That suspicion wasn't based on emotion alone. On the night she was killed, Becky sent a chilling message to her sister, saying that if anything ever happened to her, police should look closely at her husband. When investigators examined Bleefnick's phone, they say they found searches that pointed to planning, how to make a homemade silencer, and how to open a window from the outside. Those details would become central to the case. Bleefnick was charged with murder and home invasion, and he pleaded not guilty. The trial lasted 6 days, but the jury needed just 4 hours to reach a decision. The verdict was guilty on every count. Now, Bleefnick stands before Judge Robert Adrian, waiting to learn how the law will respond to what the jury has already decided. Before the sentence is announced, however, the court hears arguments that will attempt to shape his fate, beginning with a plea from the defense. Bleefnick's attorney, Casey Schnack, steps forward and asks the court to consider leniency. He argues that the harshest sentence under the law, life without parole, should be reserved only for the worst of the worst. He urges the judge to look beyond the crime itself and examine who Tim Bleefnick was before that February night. The defense highlights that Bleefnick earned a college education and maintained steady full-time employment. Schnack emphasizes that Bleefnick had no prior criminal record and suggests that these factors deserve weight under the law. His message is clear, that a man's past accomplishments and clean record should matter, even in a case as severe as this one. When the defense finishes, the tone in the courtroom shifts. State Prosecutor Josh Jones rises to respond, and his words cut sharply against any call for mercy. He tells the judge that the defense is asking for hope and compassion, but argues that Bleefnick showed none of those things when it mattered most. Jones asks the court to show the defendant the same leniency he showed Becky when he fired 14 bullets into her body. He repeats the number, driving home the brutality of the act. He asks the judge to show Bleefnick the same hope he offered his wife when he stood over her and pulled the trigger again and again. And he asks for the same mercy Bleefnick showed when he left her alone, gravely wounded and dying on the floor. After the prosecutor finishes, the judge turns directly to Bleefnick. He reminds him that this is his opportunity to speak before sentencing. Bleefnick is asked if there is anything he would like to say. His response is brief and unemotional. He simply says, no. The courtroom falls quiet as Judge Adrian prepares to explain his decision. Before imposing the sentence, Judge Robert Adrian addresses Bleefnick directly, and his words leave no room for doubt about how the court views this crime. The judge states plainly that this was not a moment of impulse or loss of control. He tells Bleefnick that he researched the murder, planned it, and carried it out deliberately. He recounts how Bleefnick broke into Becky's home and fired the gun over and over, counting each shot aloud from 1 through 14. The repetition is intentional, forcing the reality of the violence into the open. The judge acknowledges that some of those shots were fired while Becky was already on the ground, emphasizing the prolonged and relentless nature of the attack. Judge Adrian then highlights a detail that weighs heavily on the court's decision. While this murder was taking place, Becky's children were not present at Becky's house, but they were nearby, asleep in their own beds at their father's home. The judge points out that while Becky was losing her life, the children were lying safely upstairs, unaware of what was happening. That contrast underscores the calculated nature of the crime and the irreversible harm done to their family. With that, the judge delivers the sentence. Tim Bliefnick is sentenced to life in prison. There will be no chance for parole. The decision brings the legal process to an end, but it does not undo the loss at the center of the case. Becky Bliefnick's life was taken in an act the court determined was planned, intentional, and merciless. The sentence reflects that conclusion, closing a case defined by evidence, deliberation, and a verdict that the court says leaves no alternative under the law.